What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Crazy for KV's RC. I'm Tim. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future content. Right now, hot topic, I'd say, fairly hot on social media, on YouTube, Vanquish H10 Optic. A lot of people kind of making it their own, kind of choosing an identity, or at least trying to figure out what it's best at. So in my first video featuring this, I actually left it up to you all. Kind of laid out general ideas that I had for it and let you all choose what path to send it down first. Results, it was fairly close, but the results were, try to make it into a pure rock crawler. I know that there have been some videos of people hitting some pretty technical lines with it, with some minor upgrades. Nothing too wild. We're not going to go absolutely crazy. We're going to try our best to make it perform as good as anything I have. I do think it's really the only competition for a Capra. Now, fortunately, I have a two-wheel steer, front steer only Capra, but it's built pretty much to the nines. It's got Vanquish Capra axles on it. It's got a Polar Pro stubby in it, Copperhead ESC, pretty good steering servo, and it does perform pretty well. Capras do fairly well. That's sometimes why I don't drive it as much, is because it's almost too good for the terrain I have. I just don't have the big challenging stuff that's able to push something like that. But like I said, we're gonna make this thing into a rock crawler. So a couple of things you guys may noticed in my last video, I did some parking lot modifications before I knew the results. And we threw a Fusion Pro in here, 2300, a Reefs 555, slow servo, but a pretty strong servo. And we put these 2.2 Vanquish Riots on here and wrapped in some West Desert Wheeler BFG crawlers. These are the G8 ones. Really not broken in, but they got squid inserts in them as well. So the truck pretty much is sitting just like that. I did do a little bit off camera to kind of prep for this video and kind of make it go as quick as possible. You may notice we got some Vanquish 2.2 brake weights behind those wheels. That's the bummer with their 2.2 inch wheel, family. They don't have as many weight options. So a lot of times you get an aluminum clamp ring. Some of them come with plastic, but they don't have a brass clamp ring in 2.2, or the centered weights like they have for 1.9, which those are very, very heavy. Those would be extremely heavy in a 2.2. But if we want it to be a pure rock crawler, we need some front weight bias. It's very kind of center. It's got a very long wheelbase, and the skid is pretty much smack dab in the center. So it does kind of high center a little bit. The increased tire size, we went from a 4.75 to a 5.25. That did help a little bit. Seemed to do really well. That short little running footage you guys saw in the last video, which I will link right here if you're interested. But I'll go ahead and hit you with the scales. What you're looking at right now is the scales before I added the brake weights. Exactly like it was ran in the last video, with a 1300 milliamp Ovonic 3S battery on the driver's side. And then here you see with the weights. So we went from a 54-46 front to rear to a 57-43. So we're getting there. We're getting close to, I'd say, the magic 60-40, but we're not quite there yet. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of other options to add weight up front. I could go to a 1.9 and could really throw a lot of weight on it. That's something we may consider, but we're gonna do some stuff first. We're gonna see where it sits after all that, and we'll go from there. I'd like to get it real close to 60-40 though. If you didn't know, the H10 Optic has hard body panels on it. These are not Lexan, so easy to paint on the exterior, nice, thick, they look good, but they do have a decent bit of weight to them. So what I did, if you look on this other side, just took the panel off. I did a little bit of masking tape, did a masking tape template of that, cut it out, and cut out some 040 Lexan. This is even pretty thick. Very hard to heat up and bend. It's very, very rigid for Lexan. I could probably go to like an 03 or even a 02, especially for these panels. They're nice and supported everywhere. they're not going to be taking like massive hits. And if they do, so be it. But I did some weight comparison on this. This panel is 20 grams. This panel's 12, which I know this has no paint on it, but it also has a plastic film. So I feel like it's, you know, they kind of negate each other. So that's a 40% reduction in weight across just one panel. And if everything else is the same size, we should be able to reduce our panel weight by 40%. And all that panel weight is all sprung. And on that note, I talked about the panels. All the panels will be relatively simple to do besides the hood. The hood is a little bit more complex. I could do like a flat hood and then just leave the grill in place or remove it completely. But I may leave it there just because it is the most forward panel, and having the weight up here doesn't bother me too much. Additionally, we've got quite a few plastic accessories. We've got fuel cell back here, not needed, not functional in any way. There's good cross bracing in front of it and behind it. There's this power tank, which is just an aesthetic thing. That could also come out. The interior is hard molded plastic. We could take that out, but I think it would really detract from the way the truck looks. So I think I'm gonna try to avoid doing that. We have a scale radiator in the back. That is definitely functioning as some sort of cross brace. So we'll look at it. Maybe I'll see if I have a cross brace that can fit in there, something that can work and reduce that weight. But with going to that Fusion Pro, we did lose the ESC, but it is a bigger, heavier motor. So I figured our weight would change. We'd get a little bit more front bias, but it didn't really make a difference. So what else can we do? Like I said, we don't have a lot of options to add weight to the front, so reducing weight out of the rear. One of the ways to do that is some titanium links. These lower links are stainless. They're pretty thick. This is a set of titanium links, I believe from Hardcore, and very, very light, nice light, but also very, very rigid, very strong. And just by eyeballing it, these look to be the right length for the lower rears. So a little bit of weight reduced off the rear. Another thing we could do, we've got plastic drive shafts front and rear. We could throw a metal drive shaft up front, kind of help us out, get some of that weight up front. So under here, on the what I would call the chassis of the truck, it's actually set up for a VFD twin. And there's some plastic in the places of where those servos would go to actuate the dig and the overdrive. So we're gonna cut that out. Definitely gonna try that at some point. So like I said, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the button. I'm gonna basically try a bunch of different configurations in this and see which one I like the most. But we'll get rid of that because it doesn't really serve a purpose. It's a nice like mounting spot for electronics, but we can find other places to put that stuff. All right, let's talk electronics. The factory radio is actually pretty good. I like it. It does a pretty good job. It can handle the voltage that I'm gonna need it to handle. I think it can go up to 7.4. I don't think it'll take 8.4. Definitely leave a comment and correct me if I'm wrong. So in the last video, I put the Fusion Pro in there. I went down to an 11 tooth pinion, and I actually really liked the wheel speed on that. I thought it was able to crawl nice and slow, but it was also very controlled and had plenty of wheel speed when I needed it. And it's just hard to beat the smoothness of a Fusion, especially the Fusion Pro. A little bit bigger amperage on the ESC side. 60 amps on the Pro, I think 40 amps on the SE variations of the Fusion, whether you get the 1200 or the 1800. For servo duties, that 555 is doing just fine in there. You know, not poo-pooing on that, but I got a 777 here. It's a direct power servo, plenty fast, 3S capable, so it matches up with that Fusion really good. So we're gonna put that in and get a little bit better speed and more power. If we're gonna try to kind of bind this thing down, put it in really tough spots, I want that extra steering power, especially with these bigger wheels and tires. So let's talk gearing for a little bit over here, and then we're actually gonna go jump on the computer, and I'm gonna show you something I've been working on in my little bit of free time, making a gearing calculator, I guess, centered around crawlers. Kind of take the A, the guesswork, and B, You don't have to run around to a bunch of different websites, looking up gear ratios, trying to remember what's in what, and it'll just give you the final ratio, percentage of overdrive, and all that for you. So one of the easiest ways to get big overdrive in this, not the cheapest, would be to go to a VFD twin, lock it in that high overdrive, 46%, I believe, and be done with it. And actually, I would probably put underdrive in the front and the rear. Problem with that is you're adding a lot of extra weight in that transmission, and that extra weight is at the rear of the transmission, kind of right in the middle. So we're gonna avoid doing that in this variation of it. It's definitely gonna get a twin in the future, but just not yet. So I have a couple of different options, and then we'll go hop on the computer and we'll kind of talk through it. So I picked up the standard weight 21% overdrive set for a VFD. This is not for the VFD twin. So stock, we got 6.5%. The front ratio is about 41:1. The rear is about 44:1. I think to crawl, you really want to be in the 50s, even the 60s. I've got vehicles that are into the 70s, and I run them on 4S, and they've got plenty of wheel speed. The old saying says, volt up, gear down, and that's exactly what they're talking about. Get that final drive ratio as steep as you can and put more volts towards it. You gotta make sure your servo can handle it and your motor can handle it, obviously. The way we're gonna build this out, can't do 3S, so we gotta keep that in mind. Lots of guys having issues with the diffs online, so we're gonna go to machine diffs. Don't wanna deal with it. I don't know how they're driving them. Can't speak to the true durability of it, but I'm gonna pull these out. We've got underdrive gears and spools for both the front and the rear. Those are an option. And from a previous build where I put underdrive in, I actually have standard gearing, machine gears though. So we have the ability to just go machine gears in the front, underdrive in the rear. Wouldn't want to do it opposite because I obviously want as much overdrive as possible. This thing being a 13.25 inch wheelbase doesn't turn the absolute best. These axles don't turn quite as good as an F10. They turn pretty decent. If you have a stock one, check your endpoints. Mine were pretty conservative, I thought. So we want that overdrive to be as high as possible, help us pivot around things, and ultimately climb better as well. Let's go jump on the computer. I'll show you the program I made. There's a link down below if this interests you. But if I'm missing anything you want to see, when you download that, there's an email. Email me. Don't comment on this video. I just want to make sure very little goes to that email, so I will definitely see it. And I'll be checking it weekly, roughly, and making changes as people request them. So let's look at what the H10 has in it. And I apologize if you guys don't care about these details. Skip forward. We'll get back to the build. So you can see, obviously, there's a bunch of different fields here, some drop-down menus, and all this stuff is pre-filled out. At least a lot of it is. So we're going to go Vanquish, and these are front axle ratios. I didn't do each individual axle, so you do have to know what's in it. 30-tooth ring gear, 8-tooth pinion, front and rear. For our transmission, got a bunch of different manufacturers here. Missing EXO, waiting on to hear back from them. I don't know any of their ratios, but would love to add them in here. Vanquish, and this is a stock VFD 6% or 6.5. It actually comes out to 6.5. But we got a 56-tooth spur gear, a 15-tooth pinion, that's stock. And we got no portals, running straight axles. That stock 35 turn, 3 slot is about an 1800 kV. And you don't have to do the tire diameter. This just gives you kind of a final rollout, a top speed for the front and rear axle if you have overdrive, and you can kind of see what your wheel speed is and go from there. So you can see it gives you a bunch of different things. There's our front gear reduction, 41.29, that's to 1, and 44.06 to 1, 6.5% overdrive. And yeah, max front speed 7.76, max rear 7.27. Definitely way faster than walking. So let's configure it to the way I have it, because I did like it where it was. So I did an 11-tooth pinion and we got a 2300 in there. We're still running that 3S 12.6 battery voltage, and everything else should be good. So we brought our front speed down basically to the same as the rear, and our rear is even better. You can see our gear reduction is in the 50s, and the rear is even into the 60s, which is pretty good. That's probably why I really liked it right there. But let's play around with it. Let's look and see what our options we have on the bench here. Parts bin, stuff that I have on hand, and that's compatible with the truck without doing a full custom build. So we definitely want the big overdrive. So we're going to do 21% overdrive there, and let's just leave the pinion the same and the axles the same. Okay, so the 21% puts the front back into the 40s, which I don't love. So we could just pinion down and go to like a 10. Okay, that's pretty good. Into the 50s there. 21% is a decent spot to be. I really like to be over 30. To be honest, I've really liked even into the 40s on like a Phoenix. So let's do underdrive in the rear, like what we have over there. Let's see what we got. We're keeping the front stock ratios. We're going to keep it at a 10 tooth pinion, which will definitely fit. You might be able to go as low as a 9 if needed. And let's go ahead and put our 5.25 in here just so we have an idea, because that's going to make ultimately the vehicle faster. So we have 30.5%, and we're 53 in the front, 72 in the rear. That's a pretty good spot. Let's just take a peek and see what a 9 tooth pinion would do. Yeah, it puts the front almost at 60 and the rear at 80. I don't know, we may look and see if a 9 tooth will work, because I like that. Even being 80, I'm not too worried about it. I don't really think you can go too high. Worst case, we go up a tooth or two on the pinion gear and be right where we're at. So ultimately we decided we're going to throw the 21% in. Obviously, we got spools front and rear. Then we're going to throw underdrive in the rear. And then we're going to go down to a 9 tooth pinion. Other than that, you guys have seen everything else I plan to do. I'm going to get started on doing a little bit of weight reduction. Obviously keeping everything, making sure it gets set aside, because I am going to return this back to its mostly stock form, at least in appearance, for the different variations that we're going to take it down. You guys aren't going to see any running footage, unfortunately. We've got some bad weather coming up, and I want to get this out, but it's going to stay in this configuration. Hopefully get to do a little bit of testing with it, see how I like it, and I'm going to take it out and I'm going to run it against one or two very capable vehicles and see if it can be called a rock crawler. We're going to run some gates. We're going to see how it does, but I'm going to get to work. I'll see you guys at the end. All right, so we're 100% done. Obviously not. Still got to paint the panels and actually bend them. But this video is already running pretty long. But just wanted to kind of wrap this up. We'll get back to this, kind of have a part two. I'll show you guys the finished panels. And obviously we're going to get it out and drive it. I'm going to show right here the corner scales, exactly how it is right now. I took off about 5 ounces worth of stuff, give or take. So we left the hood, we left the grill, but the side panels and the roof are .040 Lexan now. Pretty easy to copy those, and honestly I may even trim them and not bend them at all, just to make life even easier for me. But I don't know, I may try to make them look as good as possible and have kind of a backup batch or set of panels. Don't have to worry about cracking them. But everything went together really well. You guys saw on the computer, 9/2 pinion is what we decided on. No issues getting that to mesh. About as small as you could go though, I think. Left the stock spur on there, 21% overdrive in the transmission. We could have shed even more weight out of this by going to the lightweight front gears and the lightweight 21% overdrive gears. But that's something, that's a pretty significant increase. Those lightweight transmission gears are, I think, $30 or $40 more. Got our 777 in there, got it centered up, and she's ready to go. And honestly, I think I'm pretty happy with where it sits. You guys saw on the corner scales, we're 59.41, which is pretty good. We went from 57.43, so we're getting real close to that 60/40. Nice long wheelbase, which I think a lot of people have been talking about the negatives of that. Turning radius, getting high centered, things like that. We should get high centered a lot less because of our increased tire size. We get a little bit more belly clearance. But one of the pros to it is you actually have more reach. So on like a big vertical climb, this truck can reach an inch further, potentially grabbing a ledge, pulling itself up, versus a 12.3 truck, which is pretty nice. Truck's really easy to work on. By far the easiest caged truck that I've worked on. Not even close. The old cage comes off really easy. Lots of screws are the same size. You don't have to worry about kind of keeping them all straight and laying them out in the order or in the orientation you took them off. Things went on really, really easily. Our high clearance rear lengths went on. Those are almost exactly the same length. Let me get a tape measure and we'll double check our wheelbase. So we might be a little bit closer to 13 3/16 now. So maybe it did get a little bit shorter. The drive shaft angle looks good. Nothing looks out of whack. Everything cycles nice and easy back there. One last thing, I was looking at potentially I have some nicer SAD shocks that came off my RC Speedy C3. Machine caps, machine pistons, and some of the other upgrades, the tie nitride shafts. Even those were a little bit leaky. I was like, I need to rebuild them. If I'm going to do it, I might as well rebuild them. And I didn't have any rebuild kits, at least not enough. I think I had like 2.5. So I have to order those up, and I'll probably put those on there because I do want the shocks to look good. So for now, these still have some oil in them, and they did perform pretty well when I was out there at the lake. I did keep all of the stock parts and kind of, set them aside for future use, kind of put the truck back to appearing stock. And we're going to run those stock ring and pinion gears later on the channel, and I'm going to torture test them. I'm thinking 2700 or 3500 kV on 4S, and we're going to see if we can break them, because I want to know what they can stand up to. If it's just big power, or if it's people landing on power with the wheels spinning with bigger, aluminum wheels, bigger tires, higher traction, things like that. But I am curious about the durability, and as well the durability of that front steering. Hopefully by then, a lot of the spare parts will be out. So if we break something, not too big of a deal. So that's going to do it for this. Next time you guys see this, we'll have some paint on here. Probably won't be anything fancy. And we're going to take it out, and we're going to see how well it rock crawls. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If I missed anything you would have done. I do think a steel front drive shaft would put us at that 60, but we're going to run the plastic for now. Yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you for sticking through this one. I know it was long. I'm sorry we didn't get it all the way finished and get some running footage, but I wanted to make sure you guys had all the information And I wanted to show you that gearing program that I've been working on, mostly just so you all get some use out of it. Doesn't do me any good if you do, but I'll have some satisfaction knowing that I'm helping people out. They're getting use out of it, and it's making life a little bit easier for folks. Because I know sometimes the gearing things can confuse people. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the update to this and any other future videos. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.